what is the fucking point of having more Muslims in your society?
So Sam Harris has finally lost it and let his overt anti-Muslim bigotry out of the bag. Or has he? Well, according to that pillar of truth and honesty, Reza Aslan, that's exactly what happened. Now, the excerpt I played at the beginning is directly taken from one of Harris's podcasts that he posted back in January in an almost 2-hour conversation with Maajid Nawaz. So before we jump to conclusions, perhaps we should listen to a bit more of that conversation in context.
But I would like to just, as a counterpoint to all of the hopeful noises you just made, I would like to just offer this. This is kind of a gut reaction to that I know millions upon millions of people are having to things like what we just saw in Germany, the recent atrocity at the Christmas market, right? So you have a Tunisian immigrant who murders a truck driver and runs his truck into a crowd of people, and I think was it 12 who died in the end? I don't know if any.
About 50 injured, yeah.
Okay.
Roughly.
So you see something like this, and this is happening in the context of this wave of immigration coming into Europe largely by virtue of the war in Syria, although there are other reasons. And there's just the brute fact that 100% of jihadists are Muslim, right? These are not the Amish, they're not the Scientologists, they're not the Anglicans. If you take a community of Muslims from Syria or Iraq or any other country on earth and place them in the heart of Europe, you are importing, by definition, some percentage, however small, of radicalized people or people who will be prone to radicalism at some future date where they just decide to start watching too many Anwar al-Awlaki videos. You know, it's just, and this again, this only happens to Muslims or people who are likely to become Muslim, right? So you see this massacre in the Christmas market, and I think many people will feel, what is the fucking point of having more Muslims in your society? It seems perfectly rational to say, we don't want any more. We have enough, right? And certainly increasing the percentage is not a help to anyone who loves freedom of speech and anything else, any of the other liberal values that you and I just spoke about maximizing. It's not worth the trouble. And if we can figure out some way to keep the number of Muslims down in any society, whether we're honest about this or whether we do this covertly, clearly it's rational to want to do this. And this is where someone like Robert Spencer would say amen, I would presume. Can you speak to that despair? And I mean, again, this is not an expression of xenophobia. This is an expression of the implication of statistics and the fact that it's only rational not to want to live in a world that looks more and more like Jerusalem at the height of the Intifada, right?
So clearly Harris is playing devil's advocate here to elicit the counter to the very argument he puts forth to Maajid Nawaz. And for even more context, refer to the podcast. It starts around the 1 hour, 10-minute mark and continues for about 15 minutes. What is clear is that Harris is not advocating for a ban on Muslim immigration, or even more hysterically, as Aslan suggests, a light genocide. Actually, I'm surprised it took this long for Harris's detractors to cherry-pick this statement. It's been out there for almost 6 months. I guess Aslan has more time on his hands after having his show cancelled on CNN for calling the president a piece of shit. And of course, the usual suspects like Mehdi Hassan have jumped on the bandwagon. But we shouldn't be surprised at Mehdi Hassan's credulity given what he professes to believe.
I'd like to raise consciousness in a gentle, civilized way, using argument, rational argument, from evidence.
In your book, you cite lots of evidence for the bad things religion's done. What I wonder is, if you were being fair, wouldn't you have also included some of the good things that religion's done?
My passion is for scientific truth. I don't much care about what's good and evil, actually. I care about what's true. Do you actually believe in your Muslim faith? Do you believe that Muhammad split the moon in two? Do you believe that Muhammad flew to heaven on a winged horse, for example? I pay you the compliment of assuming that you don't.
No, I do. I believe in miracles.
You believe that?
Yes.
You believe that Muhammad went to heaven on a winged horse?
Yes, I believe in God. I believe in miracles. I believe in revelation. I mean, the point here is that let's assume I'm wrong. Richard. I'm
Yeah,
wrong.
let's.
Let's assume I'm wrong.
And let's not forget Reza Aslan's level of intellectual integrity.
Before even getting into the analysis of Aslan's claims, it's important to begin with how he represents his credentials and education in interviews. On numerous occasions, Aslan has referred to himself as having a PhD in, quote, the history of religions.
I am an expert with a PhD in the history of religions.
We're already off track. Reza Aslan does not have a PhD in the history of religions. He has one PhD, and it's in sociology. His educational credentials include a Bachelor of Arts in Religious Studies from Santa Clara University, a Master of Theological Studies in Theology from Harvard University, a Master of Fine Arts in Fiction Writing from the University of Iowa, and a PhD in Sociology from the University of California, Santa Barbara. Aslan's biography on his own website says that he has a PhD in the sociology of religions, not history. But even this is not exactly true. Aslan's own graduate advisor at UC Santa Barbara was interviewed and confirmed that Aslan's PhD is simply in sociology and nothing else, that the words history, religion, or theology don't appear anywhere in the title of his degree, and further, that UC Santa Barbara has never even offered a PhD program called Sociology of Religions. Aslan's PhD dissertation is about political activism. It's available online, and it's purely a sociological paper, not historical or theological. He certainly doesn't have a PhD in the history of religion, which is a specific and entirely different disciplinary field.
I am a PhD in the history of religions.
I write books about what's going on in the Muslim world because I have an expertise in what's going on in the Muslim world.
My credentials as a scholar of religion. My credentials as a scholar of religion. All of the universities that have educated me, and all of the universities that have employed me.
Hold on, I have to respond to that as the Islamic scholar, as the person with a PhD in Islam in this conversation.
Nevertheless, an expert on the Bible and on Judaism and Christianity and Islam. Well, to be clear, I am a scholar of religions with 4 degrees, including one in the New Testament and fluency in Biblical Greek, who has been studying the origins of Christianity for 2 decades.
But it's not his misrepresentations of his credentials that are the most alarming. Aslan is an obscurantist. He often plays fast and loose with the truth. Here's just one example pointed out by ex-Muslim Sarah Haider.
There's a CNN clip that's been going around, and it's making rounds again. The CNN clip where Reza Aslan is on, and he talks about FGM, and he talks about Bill Maher, and talks about how FGM isn't a Muslim problem; it's an African problem.
Yeah,
That's
female genital mutilation. We should just say it for the few people that may not be aware.
Right. And then he puts a few other things out there as evidence that Muslim majority countries are actually not that bad for women, including, there are some women that are heads of state and etc. So I wrote a piece about it, co-wrote a piece about it, and published it on The Friendly Atheist. And it got this big response because I feel like there were some people a good amount of people that were wanting somebody to pick up on these things that they felt like weren't true. But they couldn't say this. And we said it, and we laid it out there, and we laid it out very clearly about why the points that he was making were dishonest at the least. And I think in a lot of ways he's aware of what he's doing. So he said many times that Muhammad, he's something to the extent of how Muhammad freed the slaves. He said things in that vein quite a few times. And that is extremely dishonest. That is not true. It's just not true. All Muhammad did was say that you can't enslave another Muslim. And there are many people, many scholars who think that this actually encouraged the spread of the slave trade, because suddenly you're in Arabia and you can't enslave another Muslim, so you have to go out and you have to go to Africa and you have to go to various places to get your slaves. He didn't condemn slavery. He had slaves. He had sex slaves. And supposedly Reza Aslan is a scholar.
And rather than having the types of conversations that Sam Harris and Maajid Nawaz are having, he tries to delegitimize those conversations with that time-honoured regressive tactic of playing bigotry bingo. And as Sam Harris noted, Aslan doesn't even have the courage to make those attacks directly. But no doubt that tactic works amongst the true believers, although I think that Douglas Murray has it right when he says people are growing tired of this game.
I sort of don't mind about the labels anymore. And to tell the truth, I know it might be different in America, but in Europe and in Britain these days, I think that these things are mattering less and less, and we're losing patience with this game. Because you see, if the whole game is played on the left's terms, as it were, then first of all, we'll lose, because there is no possibility of confronting very large societal issues only with one fragment of the political spectrum. And it's also very clear, I would say, by now, that and I mean, look, I've got, I'd say some of my best friends on the left, but it is very clear to some of us that the left has been the problem on dealing with these issues. It is the left that has been throwing around willful, and I think deliberately, knowing that they're not true, allegations against people. I've often said that with the modern left, since certainly the end of the Cold War, they've basically had a supply and demand problem. They want racists, they want Nazis, they want bigots, and actually, thank goodness, certainly in my society, I think in yours, they're in pretty short supply. And so these people have to find them. They want a supply of bigots and racists and fascists, and actually the supply is extremely small, and the people that they demand are too small in number to really give them enough of a political identity. So they stretch it out. They've deliberately used as offensive terms as they could, and used them of people that they must know do not fit that label. And I think the result is, by the way, among other things, that they have denuded certain terms of any meaning, and that this is going to come back and bite the left in a big way. And I can see this happening in Europe all the time at the moment. The accusation of racism, for instance, I don't think it's going to wash for very much longer. I just don't. Nobody cares as much as they used to about that, because they have seen the left use it on everyone. I've seen it for years. I've seen my black friends called racists.
Right.
I've seen my black friends called sellouts and coconuts and all sorts of things. I've seen the most vile racial abuse of racial minorities by the left. And I don't care about this anymore. It's too late to be willing to be blackmailed by people who are fundamentally insincere in their insults.
And I think that's exactly right. We can't afford to be shamed by people who are not only fundamentally dishonest in their insults, but their arguments as well. So what do you think? Is the game of bigotry bingo still effective, or is it starting to wear off? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you next time.